Hello and welcome to Nerdicky, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerd Steve. Today I'm joined by Michael and Tom from AcadeCon, also RPG Academy. How are you fellas doing today?
We're doing great. Point of correction, it's AcadeCon. Everyone thinks it's AcadeCon. That's kind of the inside joke, but there is no R in it.
It is it's totally cool. It's cool because, like Mike was saying, it's an inside joke. We had somebody who's now started coming to the convention who literally thought it was going to be a convention of like old school arcade machines.
Yep.
And they signed up, but they also did RPGs too. So it just worked out okay. So yeah, we have a problem with the names.
Yeah, actually, I had dice made once and they said AcadeCon and I didn't even notice it till I took a picture and tweeted it out and someone's like, there's an R in there. I'm like, what? So I had to reorder everything. So it's like the worst name in the world, but we get to tell this story all the time. So that's part of the reason why we keep it. We
knew you would do this.
Yes.
Thank you. I in my head, I was even like saying it over and over again. And then the R came out anyway. So I guess real quick, if you could each introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure.
We'll jump into it.
So I'm Michael. I'm the co-host of the RPG Academy podcast. That's where AcadeCon comes from. It's Academy and Convention put together. We've been podcasting for like 10 plus years at this point. I did a count the other day. We have like over 1,000 episodes, which is way too many. Don't do that. But we're very passionate about the hobby. We really, like when we started 10 years ago, it was a very different landscape. But our goal has always been to kind of help people get started. So we do a lot of like introductory sort of tips and tricks, like how to run your first game, because your first game won't be your best game, but you can't get to your best game until you get through your first game. A bunch of different show types. We go to conventions. AcadeCon is the convention that we run. And I just love playing games and teaching people how to play. And then Tom, go ahead and say
So Michael's OG, and then I was brought in probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And so on the RPG Academy, I mainly focus on our interview format show and tell. Dave, you guys have been on it before. It's I like to really dig into not just what you're making, but why you're making it. So it's a lot of fun, but it's funny. It's just a great story how Michael and myself met. Was I was new to D&D, like fresh, like 5th edition was it came out. My comic book shop guy was like, hey, check this out. He was just trying to sell me stuff, but I bought the box anyway. And so I enjoyed it. And so I went to a game store in the area because I didn't know anybody else who played games. And Michael was there. Michael is at this game store handing out business cards like, hey, listen to my podcast. And also I'm hosted a convention. And this year was in the woods at some lodge at a state park. And he like comes to me. He's like, hey, do you want to come to my convention in the woods? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know who you are, but I'll come play games with you. And
just come right to this white van outside. Candy.
It was so creepy. It was like something like it was very creepy, but I showed up. I had a great time. I started listening to the podcast and I started to get to, okay, this is cool. Started hanging out a little bit at different events. And then Mike was like, okay, I need somebody else's help. Tom, you can help me. And then since then, I've kind of became Michael's co-host over the last 4 or 5 years.
So it sounds like you got drafted and almost kidnapped, but yeah, that's
a little bit. I was tricked.
Yep.
What you don't know is he actually paid your comic book guy to bribe you into buying that first D&D set. It was all part of an elaborate spider.
I was like, I need a whale. I need somebody that I can just connect my ship to. Who you got? And they're like, Tom.
Yeah,
you found a way into Tom. You're set for life.
Yeah. All comic book shop owners are a little bit sketchy, so I would not be surprised if this really happened. So
that sounds accurate.
Yep.
So yeah, AcadeCon was my introduction to Michael in the RPG Academy.
And that's the only time I've ever been to that game store. I have never been back to that game store. Tom was pretty much the only person I talked to. Still very successful. Yes, I absolutely would do it again.
You can't go back because it's just going to be it's just going to be downhill from there.
So I want to call out Caleb, who is one of also the members of the faculty for a long time. He was the main co-host, is in chat hanging out, and he says that he volunteered. Tom got conned.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is it like Highlander? There can only be one Tom Jordan.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, Caleb. I totally beat Caleb in a fight, and this is true, but
Well,
don't ask any more questions about
no,
it.
realistically, it's just that no one can put up with me for too long. So
Yeah.
every now and then they need a break. So like every 3 years, I rotate co-hosts so that they don't just revolt and murder me.
Wow, that's the slow grind on them. 3 years. It takes some effort. So you guys are here to talk about AcadeCon, and not to be confused with ArcadeCon, but AcadeCon. And what is that?
So again, they're the convention and our podcast are just tied in a way that can never truly be separated. But for the podcast, back early days, like 2012, I went to Gen Con. First time I've ever been to any convention at all, much less a gaming convention. And without any exaggeration, going to Gen Con was a life-changing event for me. Never been to a convention before. I now go to them whenever I can because it was just the most fun. I couldn't get over how much fun it was. So as we're driving home from Gen Con, I'm telling the guys, a lot of people on the podcast, I cannot wait a year to have that much fun again. So we're going to start our own convention. It'll be based off of the podcast, it'll be the AcadeCon. The name it's terrible, but it came instantly. Now, a smart person would have went home and Googled local conventions and found that there's 37 that I could drive to within an hour of where I lived. I am not a smart man. So we started our own. The first 2 were just invite only in my basement kind of things. And it just sort of grew from there. And we decided to try to actually venture out. That first year at the lodge, we ran a Kickstarter. We raised $1,000. We rented out that creepy lodge with all the vultures, and it was amazing. And then we're like, okay, we got to do this again. And it just kind of has kept going from there.
I like how you're all right, I know, I'll invite people into my basement. How can I get creepier than that? Oh, a lodge in the middle of the woods.
Lodge in the woods. Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I don't know how Michael pulled it off, but that first year in the woods, that was kind of the public convention. And I'm okay name dropping people. We had some big names there. Rob Schwab of Shadow of the Demon Lord, John Wick came, and it was just Rich Baker, I believe, was there, Rich Howard. And so all these, they just came, and it was kind of this experience I don't think you're ever going to get, just 100 and something people, just a lot of new people like myself, just playing with these RPG legends, but not really realizing it. So we were just kind of hanging out. So it was a good time.
That definitely does sound like a good time to be, in such a small, intimate setting.
Yeah.
And, having those big names. I mean, the conventions that I've preferred are like that, where it's even though they're still much bigger than that, but they're still small enough. It's not Gen Con, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's just a sea of people.
Yeah. And I think also that's one of the things that we always joke about it. And it's almost become a cliche within our community that we're always oh, what'd you love about AcadeCon this year? And everybody's always the community. But it is true. It's because it just has a smaller, intimate vibe where you're really just playing games. That's really the focus. It's kind of just hanging out with your friends, but we use an online portal where you can sign up for games to play.
Right.
So it's a good time.
I mean, there's some of it by design. There's some of it just by what we have to deal with. But for the most part, all of our games happen in one large room, and our vendors are in that room as well. So if you sit down at a table and you're having a fantastic game and you're oh, I love that DM or GM and I love the other players, you're going to see them the whole other weekend because they're going to be one table over or they're going to be 5 tables up. So throughout the whole weekend, you're just going to keep seeing those same people over and over again. And again, we're still a small local convention. We're in Dayton, Ohio in November. So there's a good chance if you're there, you're probably local. So, I mean, we've had gaming groups that have formed because they met each other at our convention. We've had at least one gaming company that have now put a game out through Kickstarter. They all met there. So there really is that sense of community because it's almost like you're so close, you kind of have to just get to know people. Hopefully you like them because you're going to see them all weekend.
Yeah. So when is it? When does it go down?
So we always do it in the first part of November every year. This year, our dates are the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Again, in Dayton Convention Center, Dayton, Ohio. We have a Kickstarter running right now. We always use Kickstarter to kind of pre-sell badges, make sure we have enough support to justify, signing contracts and guaranteeing money, that kind of thing. Very happy to report that the Kickstarter is going very well. It's already funded And we actually are just like less than $200 from our first stretch goal.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. But of course, there's still room. Ideally, anyone listening is close enough to Dayton, Ohio to come play games with us. That would be absolutely top of the line. But if not, a couple dollars donation would not make me feel bad.
Yeah,
would not be upset.
The Kickstarter itself, you actually get a discounted badge through there. We sell a bunch of different ones. We've got obviously a really cheap GM badge where you just got to run 2 games. Very easy. And then we've got your weekend badges. So yeah, that's probably going to the Kickstarter is probably the best way to get your badge. But obviously after the Kickstarter, if you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in November, we're still selling badges. Yeah. Up until the day of, like, you can show up on Saturday and buy a badge. So
and I'm bad at math. Okay. Just I'm a product of the Kentucky educational system, public education system. So a new thing we did this year is we have what we call form a party, a multi badge pack. So you basically get 5 badges for one price. Mm-hmm. So it's like if you have a whole group of people. Well, I screwed up the math. It was supposed to be buy 4 and the 5th one was free. But it's more like buy 3.2, get 1.8 free. So if you got multiple people coming, it's cheaper to do, even if it's just 4 of you, you still come out ahead buying that than buying 4 badges separately.
My game group actually messaged me when they saw that, Michael. I didn't tell you this. And they're like, what is he doing? Is he trying to lose money? And I was like, who knows?
Yeah, it was not intentional. But yeah, but again, and I say this all the time, and we truly mean that. Like, I'm not trying to make money with AcadeCon. That's never been the goal. I'm just trying not to lose money. So if we break perfectly even on Sunday, I will be ecstatic. My goal is just not to lose money.
That is
making money's fine. Goal. I won't be upset. I won't be upset if I make money, but that's not what I'm trying to do. Yeah. I'm sorry. What was that?
I just said that's an admirable goal, not to lose money. But I will say, in defense of those that wish to make money, making it successful and profitable makes it easier for you to continue to do it every year.
Absolutely.
And, especially, you've got other responsibilities and families and spouses. It's like that time's got to come from someplace. And, when you make money, it makes it so much more justifiable.
No, the amount of time I put into AcadeCon every year, like it's ridiculous how much of my life revolves around AcadeCon. And at no point am I getting myself paid back for any of that, really.
So who do you have coming out this year?
So with COVID still being obviously a concern, a lot of the people that we would normally say like our special guests are either not coming or they haven't been able to confirm yet. So we don't really have a strong list of special guests other than we have some other podcasters that are coming. The Redemption crew pretty much come every year. They're basically extended faculty at this point. So Chris, the GM of Redemption, Michael and Kaylee, who are both players in Redemption, they are both also, Kaylee and Michael, on the Identico Twitch channel stream. So they're coming. And I got a few other podcasts that have reached out, but I don't have names yet to confirm. But even if no one else comes but us, I guarantee you're still going to have a great time playing games.
And is the vulture on the logo this year, is that in honor of the cabin? Yes, actually, that's, again,
there's so much about AcadeCon that's just for me. Like, it's absolutely just because it makes me laugh. So the first year we had the convention was at the lodge. And again, it was truly a magical experience. But one of the things that came out of that is there were literally vultures everywhere. I mean, people kept talking about it. They commented. It became like a joke that, like, if someone was late for a game or like if someone just didn't show up or like, oh, they must have gotten eaten by a vulture, right? So after that first year, even though we had a blast at the lodge, it was clear that if we wanted to grow at all, the lodge just wasn't big enough for us to grow. Like if we added 30% more people the second year, the lodge wasn't big enough. So we wanted to move somewhere else. We went to the Dayton Convention Center. It was a lot more expensive. There was a lot more involved with doing it. And the vulture has sort of become a representation of success. So the dragon represents us growing, moving out somewhere else, and then trying to be more successful. And the vulture is, if you screw this up, you can always go back to the lodge. You can cut it in half. You can come back to the lodge, just get 100 people, and it'll be great. So every year in our logo now, there's some sort of version of the dragon and the vulture fighting. And that's sort of a thing that probably I'm the only one that gets, but it makes me laugh every time I see it.
The vultures are just waiting for you to fail, so you have to come back.
That's right.
It seems like a metaphor for life, really.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So, how many games are generally getting run at your convention?
Oh, we usually have, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And I can't put like a number on it. I don't know the direct number, but there is enough games where you have multiple options for every time slot you can imagine. So basically starting Friday at what, like 2 or 3, or does it start in the morning?
Starts at 9 a.m. is our
Okay.
first, but usually the 9 a.m. slot's pretty bare. It's usually right around 2 o'clock when things start to pick up.
We go all the way through Sunday afternoon, and it's jam-packed. And so I like to tell people too, is that you get to try a lot of different things at AcadeCon. Yes, we have your D&D. We typically have some of the Pathfinder Society folks who are there from Dayton, but we have a lot of people who come to AcadeCon where we play a lot of different indie games. This year also, we're being sponsored by Free League. And so we're going to be doing some Free League organized play this year. So if you wanted to play One Ring or Alien, Simbrum, or any of those other games, I'm a big Free League fan, so I'm super excited about this. But there's just a host of different games. Also, board games too. Got a lot of board gamers. So we'll have a bunch of big games. People will be play testing their new war game. I think last year somebody made this weird, like this strange Star Wars zombie side, like homebrew mashup where they made like a whole battle table and brought it in. So there's a lot of cool, unique games that you get a chance to play.
Yeah. So Caleb jumped in and said probably 200 to 300 games. I don't know if that's accurate. He would know better than me because, again, I'm terrible at math. I do know that we always have more games offered than we have players for. Because, again, we need more people to come play games with us. So if we ever cancel a game, it's almost always because not enough people joined into that one. So then they break that table breaks and go somewhere else. And we also have tables that are set aside just for pickup games. You know, like as Tom alluded to, there's a game library that's free to use. You just grab a game, go to one of the tables, sit down and play. So there's literally a ton of events. And then I'll call out 2 specifically that I run. So I run a Scooby-Doo Dread game every year, which I would like to say is one of the highlights of the convention. Basically, it's Scooby-Doo meets Clue the movie. So the premise is that 20 years ago, Scooby died under mysterious circumstances, and the 4 remaining members of the Mystery Inc. gang have been called to the spooky old house in the middle of the bayou to solve that final mystery. And it's a dread game, so we use Jenga, and it's amazing. And then I also I host a D&D inspired murder mystery LARP, which involves free cake. So it's a birthday party is the setup. So there's actually like a birthday cake that everybody gets to eat. And almost always people costume. We have 5 NPC characters. They always come in costumes, and it is absolutely just an amazing time. I love that event. It gets better every year because I make little tweaks, but it is absolutely one of the probably the top tier, because none of our events cost anything. That's one thing to mention, that there's no $2 per hour or $4 per table fee. Once you have a badge, everything's free once you get in there. But certain things are more, sought after. So that one usually goes very, very quick.
It's funny too. We always have, and I like the idea that we don't charge for any games. Every year it's kind of different. Because we have a lot of GMs and DMs who come to the convention. That's kind of why we always have more games than players, because everybody is a dungeon master at our convention. And so everybody's running their games. And we always have a few, we get a few private rooms too, where people can sign up for to run like special games. And there's always 1 or 2 just like standout games, and it changes every year. Like some highlights, a few years ago, we had U2 Can Cthulhu come, where they basically set up this elaborate Call of Cthulhu games with actors and props and all sorts of stuff. And then also, obviously, Michael's big murder mystery. And then back in 2019, James Intricasso came, and he was play testing his Tarrasque game, where he had 3 separate tables, and basically where we were swapping around and stuff. And what's cool though is we don't like consider these like special events where there's like, you pay for them. It's just kind of like you're looking through the list of games and you're like, oh wow, this is just on this list. I'll sign up for it. So it's just, there's always 1 or 2, just crazy things every year that'll blow your mind.
Yeah, the Planet of the Tarrasque adventure is a lot of fun.
I got killed. I will is Shane of the Mundangerous podcast. I was I don't get to play D&D a lot. All right. Cause I'm always running it. I'm sure, Dave, I don't know how much you get to play, but it's far and few between for me. So I'm very excited. I'm playing this warlock, and I don't really kill characters a lot of times in my games. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just going to jump into this situation. And I do that. And there's a ancient red dragon there, and Shane just kills me. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, this is you were playing by the rules as written, Tom. Get wrecked. And so that was just it was just a highlight for me. So
that's funny.
Sounds like
in our Shadow of the Demon Lord game, James has racked up the most character deaths thus far.
Oh, do you play in that game?
I do.
He mentioned that.
Second for most deaths. He's got 2 and I've got 1. So
James is a great dungeon master.
Yeah, for sure. So what has the attendance been like pre-pandemic?
Oh, good question.
Yeah. So we pretty much grew every year from the time we started when we went to the lodge. And then in 2019 was our biggest year. We had a little over 500 attendees, not counting staff who, basically we're all volunteers. We all work for that. And then 2020, COVID. So we canceled. We didn't have an event at all. 2021, we thought about it, but we eventually decided to have our event. We kind of posted it kind of late because we were trying to see how far could we wait and still have time to do everything. And we sold over 330 badges, but only like 180 people showed up. So it was very small. It was still bigger than our first year at the lodge, but I think it was probably the second smallest. So this year, our goal is to get back to like 350 actual people in the building. And based on what the Kickstarter is doing, I think we're on target for that. Like, it seems like COVID's not over. Like, I currently have COVID in my house. My wife has it. My youngest son has it. I'm not feeling well, so I'm pretty sure I have it. I'm going to go get tested when we're done here. But I think for a lot of people, it's got to the point where it's just something we're having to deal with. So I think there's going to be more people that are going to come this year that maybe didn't come last year because of COVID. And then also I know Metatopia, which is usually on our same weekend, they did cancel for various reasons, including COVID. So anyone who normally goes to Metatopia might find their way down to us.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that far away from there, considering that one's in Jersey, I believe, up in North Jersey. It's a couple hours from me. So are you guys doing anything special? Any different precautions? You require a vaccination? You doing masks? We have wrestled
with this on again, off again for forever. And so to be clear, I believe in vaccinations. I'm fully vaxxed, 3 jabs. I'll get a 4th the moment they let me do it. But I have been to other conventions that have required vaccination status, and it is laughable at how easy it would be to bypass that if you wanted to. So we are not going to require vaccination or masking unless something changes between now and then, like the state local guidelines or the DCC facility specifically says we have to. But what we are doing is we're trying to incentivize that. So basically what we're doing is we have this daily door prize raffle, and we get tons of games that are donated by publishers and game companies. We buy a bunch from our Kickstarter. We have hundreds of prizes, and we can't we can't sell you tickets because we're not a charity. We're not allowed to sell raffle tickets in Ohio. Yep. So the only way to get more tickets is if you voluntarily show us your Vax card, you'll get 10 extra tickets. Every day that you show up, if you're wearing a mask, we'll give you 5 extra tickets. Normally, vendors and demo tables aren't included in that, but they will for this. So we're going to try to encourage as many people as possible to do that, but we're not going to require it. And ultimately, my reasoning, because it came down to my decision, is I would rather someone who's high risk or just concerned not come because they know that, than to show up thinking that because we have a vax status requirement or masking, that they're going to be more protected than we can actually provide for them. Because there's already been people who were bragging at Gen Con that they brought fake vax cards. And I'm not a trained person. You show me a card, I'm going to say, yes, I want to give you your thing. So as much as I hate to say that, I just would rather someone not come than to come not realizing the risk they're actually in. I hope that makes sense to people. Again, it's not been an easy decision, but that's what we settled on.
Yeah. Well, thanks for answering that question so people kind of know what to expect for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks for the super chat, Sean Riley. Nerdark is pardon me for interrupting, but I was wondering if y'all could make a video build based on the Knight Enchanter from Dragon Age. I would have to find out what that is first. That sounds like a video game thing.
Yeah.
And I do not video game. My only hobby really is TTRPGs because I have a one-track mind.
Well, do you paint minis? That's a different. Do you do that at all?
No.
Okay,
Matter of fact, James Intercasto's story, right?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we'll get invited to do the paint and takes, and Jason from Rumsmith TV oftentimes will do them and invite us, and I'll do them. I don't actually like painting minis, but I like hanging out with those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice that they ask us. So I'll usually do that, and I know they were looking for someone, and I was like, hey, James, Jason's looking for some guests. Would you be interested? He's like, I fucking hate painting minis. I was like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one.
That's funny.
No enjoyment from it whatsoever.
Yeah,
So,
in the before times I played video games, I played the first Dragon Age. It is an amazing game, but I haven't played any of the other ones.
So I did want to. So the COVID stuff. Our door prizes. If you knew what door prizes we had, like you would go get and you're not vaccinated. You would go get vaccinated and bring your vax card. So we always have so many door prizes, and I've never been to an event that just gives out so much good merch. So like, obviously some of our sponsors, I mentioned Free League. We're going to have a bunch of Free League stuff that they're sending us. Crafty Games, Pelgrane Press, Elderwood Academy. That's just to name a few. And we just have their stuff that they say, give this out for us. So we do that. And we give you tickets that you just, when you sign up, and so you can just pick which daily door prize you want to enter. And there's a ton of them. We put up it. We're such a, I don't know, I wouldn't call us cheap, but you can know that we're like, we're homebrew. We're definitely grassroots because we just kind of put some paper bags out on a table and with a name on it. And it's like, you drop your ticket in if you want this Elderwood Academy box. And then at 3 p.m., we'll have everybody gather and pull a ticket out.
Yeah. What do they call that? What kind of auction is that?
Blind auction. I think that's what you're.
Yeah. I don't think it's that.
My wife takes part in a bunch of things that are like that in the past over the years, where it's just different events that have that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's so it works.
We did actually charge for tickets one year, not realizing we weren't allowed to do that. So we got away with it. Hopefully the statute of limitations has passed, but someone brought up like, hey, that unless you're technically a charity in Ohio, you can't sell raffle tickets. So we have stopped selling them. Yeah. So now basically everyone who gets a badge, you get like 5 tickets. Just you buy a badge as part of it. But then every year we have some way for you to get extra. Last year it was to sign up for our mailing list for AcadeCon. This year it's for the Vax and the Maxing thing. So again, there's no requirement, but we're hoping to incentivize some people that would like to. Again, we're trying to find some way to keep everybody as happy as possible, I think, which is kind of impossible. But I have one sponsorship. I can't give the name just yet because we're still finalizing, but I was on the phone. They actually called me. This wasn't just an email. And they're telling me all the stuff they want to send. And I literally interrupted and said, we only have like 300 people coming because they're sending me so much stuff. And they're like, oh, that's fine. We're good. Yeah, we know. I'm like, okay, great.
It is cool that it's just a unique experience. I know obviously I'm biased because I help run the convention, but I do think it's such a high quality convention with just a smaller number of people. It's just a completely new experience that most people get. And it's a lot of fun. We also have vendors too. Michael, you want to talk about, we've got vendors.
Yeah. Which again, going back to we try not to make money, we try not to lose money. Our vendor fees are very reasonable, even for the size of the convention we are. Most of them are local, like because we're so few people, it's not really worth it for someone to drive, 4 states and then put themselves up in a hotel for 3 days. That they can't recoup that cost. But we have quite a few local vendors, a lot of crafty people who make like crochet Pokemon balls, or, they do their own art of like Legend of Zelda characters, Sailor Moon drawings, that kind of stuff. I think usually we have 1 or 2 retailers who are local who'll come in and sell actual, game books and that kind of stuff. But we have a bunch of vendors who pretty much come back every year. for the most part. Like, again, last year was kind of a rough year because less people showed up, but and we're all in that same room. So the vendors kind of line the exterior of the main room. So everyone gets to see all the vendors get to see everybody. Vendors can play games, they can host games at their table, they can host games out in the field, as it were. We also have demo tables. So if you have someone who's a game designer and they're wanting to get feedback on their product, you can get a demo table pretty cheap. Comes with 2 badges. You get your own table for the whole weekend. And you're even allowed to sell the game that you're demoing. But if you want to sell anything else, you have to get a vendor table. And again, I've literally talked to vendors who tell me I don't charge enough. Like I've had a vendor say, you don't charge me enough for this, you should charge me more. And I still haven't raised my prices because I want them to have such a great convention that they'll come back every year. Again, it's less work I have to do trying to find someone to replace them. And then they're going to tell their friends and their friends are going to show up. So, it's kind of like putting your milk in the back of the store and selling it for less than you pay for them. I'm hoping that eventually that will pay dividends.
Are you going to have any panels or workshops?
So we usually do, but we often have, game designers, podcasters who come, and they're usually like, we'll have like a live event, maybe a live show that's recorded for a podcast. We've had game designers talking about designing and kickstarting, that kind of thing. I don't have anything like that on the list yet. In years past, the DM's Block Crew has come and held a live event of their Geek Wars podcast, which is like a really nerdy, really hard trivia style game. So I don't have anything we can announce about that yet, but we will probably end up with a few of those this year.
How many spaces do you generally have for that kind of stuff?
So we rent out 4 side rooms for those types of events. And they're still kind of small. There's like maybe 30 people that can sit in each of those rooms. So those live panels, you can have attendance of like up to 30 people, maybe a little bit more if people are standing, type of a thing. So we have, we don't really want them to overlap too much because we never would put one panel against another panel because we want people to be able to go both. But we have room to have up to 4 separate events at one time. And then in our main game room, we have I think there's 75 tables in that room. So we could have up to 75 games going at once, but we've never even got close to that.
Nice. Tom, you mentioned Free League. Do you have a favorite Free League game?
Oh, that's okay. That's tough. Probably Forbidden Lands. I'm running a regular campaign of that. What it does for me, it gives me the exploration and that I don't feel like I get from D&D, and that encumbrance rules in D&D are so hard. It's something that you can so easily ignore and not put in your games, but I want them. And Free League's encumbrance and consumable rules are just so good. But it's kind of the joke that I play D&D, but I just play so many Free League games too. I love Alien. I haven't got to play the One Ring starter set yet. I've ran the Symbaroum starter set, but if it's Free League, I've played it. So
I've not played any Free League yet. Although I've heard I've heard good things about Free League. I've been told that their aliens, the stress mechanic is one of the best RPG mechanics. It's
so good. Especially if you're a fan of Alien and you start using the stress dice, it you get more powerful as you get the stress dice, but also it's more easy to fail. So you want them, but you also don't want them. So it creates stress. And it's like, oh, I understand why they call it stress dice now. Yeah. So,
well, and also I like the fact that it's kind of infectious amongst the rest of the players. Like if one of the character gets stressed, so the other characters begin getting stressed, has been how it's been explained to me. And I'm like, that makes sense. Because if you've ever been in a stressful situation, and if you have one person freak out, you're going to start having other people freak out as well. It's just the way it goes.
Well, Dave, do you like hex crawls at all?
I have not done a hex crawl in like 20, 30 years.
So Forbidden Lands is a hex crawl game, and it is just it just feels so good playing it. I feel like I'm playing like a game of olden days, and D&D before it was the big giant thing that it is. And it's just such a good feeling. It's funny though. There is the Free League games that we usually have at AcadeCon. They are it's usually we only have 2 or 3. This year we're trying to have a lot more because every year they just fill up instantly. as soon as signups go up, the free league games are like, boom, they're all filled. Everybody wants to play it. So,
well, and they're just killing it with getting licenses right now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and then also they announced they got the One Ring 5th edition coming out soon. So there you go.
Yeah. So
right
I will
there.
give a quick plug for our actual podcast, because that's where AcadeCon comes from. We've started a new series of shows within the last few months called the Sample Adventures. And this is where we're playing a game or a source book or a setting that comes with a suggested, this is how this game should work type of thing. We've got several of them already on the books that you can go watch or listen to. And we have several more scheduled, but the Alien RPG is one of them. And it's a 2-parter. The last part came out today, part 2. So if anyone is interested in the Alien RPG, but haven't had a chance to experience it, we have it on our podcast feed right now. It's a 2-parter. Each one's like 50 minutes long or something. And we play through the starter set. So that's the adventure that we're playing. So you get to kind of see how that game works, how the stress mechanic works, and get a good feel for it.
Yeah, it's just too many games, not enough time.
That's a problem. It's I got my backlog is like it's filling up.
That's part of the impetus for the sample adventure project was that we had so many games that we wanted to try, and I figured, well, if we turn it into a show, then I kind of will be forced to try to make it happen. And we have a Google Doc that we're using to organize them. And I think there's easily 40 to 50 games on it right now. And we just keep finding them. Like everyone's like, oh, here's a new game I got, or here's one I just, found in my closet. It has so any game that has a sample adventure is eligible for the list. And we have basically this is people who are willing to GM it, people who are willing to play it. And as they start to fill up and get enough, we move them to the top of the list and we start looking at schedules. We have a Dune RPG and a 5th edition Eberron game, I think, are the next 2 that are about to go. And then a 13th Age and a Blue Rose are getting close to going. But again, there's so many of them. I don't know when we're going to get to them, but this is like a multi-year project. It's going to be a while, but I'm having so much fun playing all these different games.
I think that's one of the cool things too about like local conventions, even all conventions. You get to just play games that you wouldn't typically get to play, or at least that's my strategy. I sign up for games I don't really play all the time.
That's what I do at Gen Con. I try to play a game that I've never played before. And I still run Marvel, the old TSR Marvel face rip system. I usually run in one session of that at AcadeCon just because it was the second RPG I ever played. It's not I don't think it's a well-designed system, but I have a lot of fun with it. And I have a few homebrew rules that kind of smooth it out. But I just like to show that game. And that, again, that you can't, sort of condense down AcadeCon more than that. I run it because I love that game and I love sharing it with people who've never played it before. So that's why I
disagree. I think that game is so far ahead of its time.
Really? Okay.
I have no opinion because I've never played it.
Oh, you should play it. It is a great game. We did like 2 seasons on the channel of that.
Really?
So we played quite a bit of it on here, but I mean, spendable XP. As far as I know, it's the first system to do that with its karma system, and the ability to edit things in the game, and I don't know. I just felt like it was ahead of its time as far as games. Games at the time. It's really simple to learn.
There's a few fiddly bits with like this type of attack versus that kind of defense type of a thing. But again, that's the stuff I kind of smooth over. And one of the things that I do that I think makes the game more fun and more comic booky is basically it's kind of like a stunt mechanic. So let's say you're Cyclops, you have I-beam power, which that's what the dragon behind me is supposed to represent as Cyclops. It's very much an X-Men 97 color scheme going on there. And the first time you want to like bounce your I-beam off of something and hit somebody, you have to roll that at a -3 column shift. But if you are successful, you get to write that down on your character sheet. And that's down to something you can do going forward. So every time you try something new and wild with your power, there's a chance that if it works, you've now added a new stunt, like a new way to use your power. So it makes you very powerful over,
that's
much quicker.
In the rules. It's just a lot harder
It's a lot harder. And I make it a little bit easier to do.
I saw that Michael was running that game at AcadeCon, and I almost signed up for it, but then I looked it up and I saw this big multicolored chart, and my eyes just glazed over, and I said,
"Universal battle chart."
Yeah, that chart is the best chart of any game ever. It is really I guess it could be intimidating to look at for the first time because it does look like this weird periodical table.
Yeah,
right?
It does.
But like once you understand it, and it doesn't take much. It's like always roll high, and you just look at the color. So,
well, Dave, if you want to play, you can drive down to Dayton, Ohio in November, and you can play in Michael's game.
I have to see. Noted or Doug's in Ohio, but I forget where he lives now. I know he used to live in Lorraine. I don't know if he's. I don't think he's there anymore.
The other great.
Maybe I'll crash on his couch.
Yeah. Tell him. The other thing is we do have a connected hotel as well to the convention center. So, and they give us a slightly discounted block of rooms. Yeah. So if you plan on coming, you can just tell them that you're coming for AcadeCon, and then you can just walk over the Sky Bridge right to the convention every morning. Yeah. So,
and
that's always nice.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the barbecue place.
Yeah.
There is just an amazing little tiny, like like 8 people in there, place is packed, but this little barbecue joint that's like a block or 2 away. Everyone goes there every year because it is such good food. It's reasonably priced. They should pay me because we send so much business their way, but I haven't been able to work that out yet. But absolutely, if you like barbecue, there's a place there that you will enjoy. And the corn muffins are to die for.
I got a funny story. The barbecue place. So this was before I was part of the helping you organize. I was part of the family. I walked down to the barbecue place. I was by myself because the rest of my group was playing games. So I go to sit down, little tiny like kind of bar in there, and there's only one other person. And I look at them like, oh, they're a gamer. And because we can just pick each other out. So I was like, they must be from the convention. Sat down. I had barbecue.
Your game dar was tingling.
It was. So I sat down with them. We had a great time, just eating food and talking about games and stuff. And then I go back to the convention to go sit down for the panel that I wanted to go watch. And turns out the person that I was eating dinner with was Rich Baker. And it was just kind of like, okay, that's cool. I didn't know that. So good barbecue stories.
That's the great thing about this industry. It is really easy to connect with people. It's not like other industries where, and you guys would know this better than most people, right? Because in other industries, if you want to get to the guy or the girl or the person, right, you usually have to go past a gatekeeper, right? A secretary or administrative assistant. Somebody, part of their job is just to keep you away. RPGs is not like that at all, right?
Nope.
And they're most of the time, most people are happy to talk to you, to help you. So many people have donated time to me just out of the kindness of their heart.
Yeah.
People just want to play games. We're all gamers.
Exactly. That's kind of what it comes from. And we're so stratified now with podcast and, Twitch shows and YouTube shows that if you're a game designer, you're probably screaming, please, someone come talk to me because I want to talk about my game. So they're not behind some wall. They are jumping off a cliff towards you. You just have to catch them.
Yeah. So speaking of game designers and such, who's either coming up on the RPG Academy or who have you had on recently?
So I recorded last night with the gents from the Tabletop Journeys podcast, and they currently have a Kickstarter running right now. So if anybody wants to go check that out, it's the Multiverse of Subclasses. Tom normally handles those. So I know the Ian one for the Viking verse was a big one. So I'll let Tom, he's the guy for this.
So we've got so many good interviews coming up. We recently talked to, like Michael's saying, Ian Sharp of I don't know if you saw the Viking verse game. I did. I backed it after he was on the show. So yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. You all talked to him too.
Yeah.
But it was so we had Ian on, and then the other one I'm currently working on is currently in the works. Talk with Free League. They're going to be coming on to talk about Dragon's Bane. So that's that new. I guess it's old. I don't know if it's German or Swedish, but it's an old school. It's an old school D20 game, I believe. And they're making an English translation of it. And it's just got that really cool kind of old school vibe that I really like. And so they're going to be coming on the show. But basically, if somebody's got a big Kickstarter coming out, they've probably been on Show and Tell. So.
And we're always looking for more people. So if you have a project, either you specifically, Dave, or just anyone listening, reach out to us. What's your email for that, Tom?
It is tom.therpgacademy@gmail.com. Yeah, if you're working on anything cool, shoot me an email. And I will say this, all right, and Dave, you may be able to recognize this because you do a lot of interviews too. There's so much stuff that is coming out. We can't say yes to everything, but if you got something, let me know because I'll look over at it. And if I feel like I'm like, oh, this is really, like this looks really cool, or this looks like something I would play, I'm going to reach out to you. So
give us time. That's the number one thing. Give us like 8 weeks. Don't do it 2 weeks before or during a Kickstarter. It's too late at that point. I'm sorry, Dave. I spoke over you.
No, you bring up a very excellent point. But yeah, I've definitely done that where you look at something, you're like, oh, this looks really cool. Why don't you come on and talk about it? And I'm currently playing in a Shadow of the Demon Lord. That's why the Viking verse really jumped out at me, because I'm like, oh, I'm really enjoying this system. But playing it in the future with Vikings, that sounds great too.
Yeah. So Rob Schwab was actually one of the first guests that we ever had for AcadeCon. He came that first year in the lodge, and he came back every year for multiple years. He's currently, I don't know if you follow him on Facebook, he's got some life issues in the way, so he's kind of out of the circuit right now. But he's someone that I like to consider a friend from our time together. He's always been very kind and generous with his time towards me and to our event. Sadly, he's not going to be able to come this year, but I expect that if his personal issues, if he, all that eventually resolves itself, he should be coming back. But he's someone that I love having our event. I think he vibes so well, especially at the lodge. Like that was like the number one thing people talked about was his games, Settled Demon Lord. I think that was when it was first kind of coming out. Maybe he was even on Kickstarter. So Rob's a good guy, and I wish him the best.
Nice. Well, hopefully you'll be able to score some good guests this year. But also the world's still kind of up in the air. Everything's expensive, so.
Totally, it is expensive.
Yeah,
we're trying to order dice, and dice are expensive.
We just I don't have them down here. We just ordered some dice because we're working on our own RPG called Zoo Mafia, and we just finished up basically like a 12 episode live play test of it. So now we're in the process of writing the quick start rules. So we probably will hit you up at some point.
Yeah, do it
point in the near future.
Yeah.
Yeah, the motto is go wild, do crime, but don't let the humans catch you.
Nice. I'm here for that. I'm all about games where you get to do crime.
Yeah.
Like if that's baked into it, I'm in.
Every episode we get people going, is this about fairies? I'm like, no, it's about regular animals. There are no fairies.
Oh my word. Okay. All right. So Dave, I am interested to talk to you now about your furry crime game. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we'll use that in some of the marketing and we'll test it. We'll A/B test it, right? Be like,
that's right.
So it did okay when it was just animals doing crime, but it was fairies doing crime through the charts.
Through the roof, yeah. I'll quickly plug. I have a game I'm working on. You may have seen me tweet about it. It's called Action 12 Cinema. It's a D12 dice pool system, and it's basically you're playing through bad action movies, but not bad ones, like the good bad ones, So it's a GM-less game, a lot of random charts. You come up with just wild plots and characters, and then you just roll a bunch of D12s and play improv with your friends. So hopefully that will be out on some Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign either late this year or early next year.
You've been working on that for a while now.
Very long time, but I don't know what I'm doing because I'm not actually a game designer. I'm just someone who likes playing games. So it's been a very slow process for me, but I think I'm getting close to being able to actually put it out in a way that people could go, oh, this is actually a thing now.
Also,
go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say also, look, there's we've all played a lot of D10 dice pool systems, a lot of D6 dice pool systems. All right. And Michael decided I'm going to do something new and I'm going to do D12s.
D12s. Objectively the best polyhedral.
I don't know about that.
Oh,
so
best die.
This sounds like barbarian propaganda to me.
Yeah, I think so.
A friend of mine, they had a game company, and the way we met them was they were demoing a game called Kobolds, and it used it's a tabletop game, not an RPG, but it used D12s as well.
I will say D12s are fun to roll.
Yeah,
they are fun.
Exactly.
Yeah,
D4s just stop. D6s just sort of tumble. D8, same thing. Like there's no real excitement to it. But D12, it's got just enough heft and it's just round enough that it'll roll really good, but it doesn't roll forever. I love D12s. That's
okay.
So what made you decide to go GM-less?
because I knew that I wasn't going to create a game that's going to take over the world and be the next D&D, but I could create a game that, hey, Sarah can't make it tonight. You want to play this? Sure, it's GM-less, so we don't have to do any prep. We just sit down, play pretend with our friends for a couple hours. And who doesn't like movies, especially the good, good movies? So it just, and I am a big movie guy. So, one of my big hobbies obviously is role-playing games, but I also love movies, in particular bad ones. I think they're fun. Yeah. So it just sort of combined all those things together. And the GM-less thing, I thought it was I think this is what I can hang my game on, that it's GM-less, zero prep. Everything is created at the table, 2 to 3 hours. It's we can't play our real game tonight, so let's play this instead. It's a con game, one shot kind of thing. And I think that's a great place to start as a game designer, to get my feet wet with it.
Yeah. I will say, this is the double-edged sword of TTRPGs, is the fact that all game masters are game designers to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
But not all game masters are professional game designers. And that is the caveat, right? And you can move from one to the other, but just because you're a game master doesn't automatically mean you're going to be able to make a professional game. And it's a huge skill set.
I am very clear when I talk to people, when I do interviews, you are the game designer. I am not a game designer. I typically, which is funny, I try to play all my games that I play rules as written. I'm if it says it's here, because I'm not trying to make up anything, because I am that lazy. I don't want to design anything. So that's me though.
I think you could definitely, anyone who runs a lot of games can tweak and alter things all they want, and it's a process, right? And that's kind of how you get better at it.
Oh yeah.
We all do it subconsciously.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just forced to, right? Because you just do something, you're like, I don't know how that works. I guess I have to figure it out now, right? But it's also a really, almost the dark side of the industry, because one of the things I hate is pay what you want. Just because I think it devalues what game designers and what people that are designing out there do. And it's not something you find in many other industries. I can't go to the grocery store and be like, I think this is worth free. Let me just take it home.
I'm going to buy these strawberries, and if I enjoy them, I'll come back tomorrow and give you $1.
Yeah.
No, that's not how that works.
Because, and the reason I say that is it kills the industry.
Yeah.
If you want quality, top-notch game designers, they have to be able to make a living in the industry, or they'll go to another industry that will feed their family. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think about just the value of an RPG, and if I got to pay $50 for a book, that is then going to give me 10 4-hour sessions. That is well worth its value. And it's so funny. I'm interested to see too, now that Wizards is bumping up they're doing the bundles now with the new Dragonlance, where they bumped it up to $59.99 instead of their $49.99, but you get the digital bundle. If that'll kind of shift the needle a little bit and cause other people to start charging a little bit more, but that $49.99 is always that kind of benchmark. So
yeah, anytime you put a product out and it's more expensive than the WotC hardback, you're going to get legions of people say, why is this worth more than that? And it's a matter of scale. Again, I love D&D. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite RPG, but I love playing all these other games too. I just don't think you can use it as a benchmark. I just think it's so skewed how much of a market share they have in the industry that it's just not reasonable to make them the benchmark that everyone works off of. I just don't think it's fair to any of the designers. But again, it's a free market. People pay what they want. And if you say it's pay what you want, it will probably be free.
I will say, I'll push back on that a little bit in the sense that we did put out a book and we charged $49.99, right? So it was, 10, or, oh no, that's exactly what they charged.
Yeah, that was
and I don't I guess that's just what I thought it would be worth, but I don't think people will push back depending on the product, right? I think it'd be very product specific. But the thing too that people have to understand is so the book that we put out, that was 25-30 grand just in production, not printing.
Oh yeah.
Not to produce it, or to produce it, not to actually print it.
Right.
Just because the art and everything that goes with it is so expensive.
Yeah. Art is so expensive. And again, that's one of the things, again, you get in these bigger companies that they have either in-house artists or, they just have access to that. You can, like, if I try to put out a book that looked like a WotC hardback, I would have to mortgage my house to be able to pay just for the art.
And also, as a third-party designer, it's a really weird space in the amount of pushback we get from artists compared to what they're willing to do for a name brand, for like less right, and have less rights and not pay as much. And those companies don't seem to get nearly as much pushback like Wizards of the Coast, because they're just happy to be like working for them. Where like when you're the small guy, like we get browbeaten because it's like, well, it's expensive and we don't have piles of money like a dragon. Right.
Wait, you're telling me that Wizards of the Coast just has piles of money laying around?
I think they do.
Okay.
Must be nice.
That's what we're gonna heist in your furry game, your furry crime
Wizards
game.
Of the Coast,
we're gonna steal Wizards of the Coast some money.
Sneak out of the Seattle Zoo.
Yeah, that's a good zoo.
Over to the Wizards of the Coast headquarters, because underneath of it, what people don't know, are basements full of vaults.
Yeah, it's true.
They call it the Undermountain, and it's their secret underground vault.
Yeah. You just need to be a zebra to get it.
For sure. So in our playtest, we didn't have any zebra players. We did have an otter, an owl, a bird eater spider, and a snake.
Okay, I would be a badger, just that whole.
Oh man, nothing can contain a badger. I love me some honey badger videos.
They just don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
What is there a particular game you guys are looking to be or excited to be able to play at the convention?
All right, Michael, what's yours? Do you have one that you hope somebody runs?
Well, again, honestly, I almost never get to play at AcadeCon because I'm either at the desk or I run things. So I run, Scooby-Doo Dread, I run my Murder Mystery, and I usually run or Marvel Face Rip. I might run Action 12 Cinema this year. But like, if I do get time to play a game, I do really enjoy Forbidden Lands. The Fallout game looks kind of interesting to me. I'd like to maybe try out Conan, the 2D20 system. I played the Star Trek one, but I tried to run it from the starter set and I didn't quite grok the rules. So I'd like to play with somebody who actually knows what they're doing.
So for me, I've heard rumblings that there's going to be some people running the Quiet Year at AcadeCon. And then also there's typically some of these more, a lot of people will run those more world building games. So we'll usually have a game of Microscope or two. So when I get the chance to just sit down with a few people and just kind of build a world, that is to me so satisfying. Because you don't get that, like most game groups aren't just going to be like, you know what, guys, tonight I want us to all do Microscope. Like they just don't. So having the chance to play a game like Microscope or The Quiet Year or Dialect, like those kind of world building games are just so appealing to me. And so when I see them pop up, I'm instantly signing up. We will actually post after the Kickstarter is over, like 2 days. Is it 2 days later, Michael?
It might be sooner, but I want to give myself 2 days in case I'm like half dead from the Kickstarter.
What we'll do is we use tabletop events. And so what we'll do then is we will open that up for game submissions. So everybody who's bought a game master badge will get an email allowing them to go into tabletop events and submit their games. And then a couple of weeks later, we'll open up tabletop events for our VIPs. So we usually will do a special limited number of badges. They'll get a couple days. It's very few. It's like 20, right?
Right. The VIPs, I think there's 20 this year.
Yeah. So they'll get a couple days to sign up for games first. And then after that, we'll open up to everybody. And then everybody can go sign up for their games. So typically about 2 days after, that's when that game list starts to populate. And that's when we get really excited.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely helps us if people will support the Kickstarter, but I also get that you may want to see what we're offering before you're willing to throw down some money. So if that's you, wait for the tabletop event site and you'll be able to peruse the game's offerings. And if you see some things that you like, maybe that's what will tip you over the edge to come support us. I completely understand that. But if you think you're coming, getting it to the Kickstarter is the most helpful because it gives us the money to pay all those deposits and buy the t-shirts that we've already ordered, the poker chips we've already ordered, and the dice we've already ordered, so that we don't have to put those on a credit card and we get hit with fees and stuff. So Kickstarter is the best for us, but I totally get that's not everyone's going to be able or willing to do that.
I know one of my friends has been attending your conventions for a long time, and they always have nothing but good things to say about it. Jen from Pixelscapes on
Yep.
Oh, I've played many games with Jen, so at AcadeCon.
Yep, she's one of our vendors who pretty much gets a booth every year.
So,
oh no, I was thinking some. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I do know Jen. I was thinking we have there's another Jen who runs a splattered pixel vendor booth. I got those confused, but yes, I know Jen very well. She's usually comes to our faculty retreats as well. She's one of our perennial sponsors and backers. She's a lovely woman. Love her so much.
Yeah, I ran a game a couple years back, and she was one of my players in that game, and she was like, she's an awesome RPer and player, and also little power gamer as well. But fun. Like, that was one of the most fun groups I've ever run from. It was one of those groups where like, I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to be there for them to play.
Yeah.
So Dave, I got to ask you then, if you go to a convention, do you like to play do you play Dungeons and Dragons? Do you like to try something new? Like, when you go to a convention, like, what do you like to play?
I rarely ever play any games when I go to a convention.
What do you do with them? Just buy stuff?
Sometimes I buy stuff, but it's, usually it's just hanging out with my friends, networking.
Okay.
Occasionally there will be pickup games. I've definitely jumped into a few pickup games. Or, sometimes I'm on panels or on live play games. So it's kind of like a work event for me more than anything. But like, last time I went to Gen Con, it took me all 4 days to get all the way through the floor, because I would just like you guys, like you do this for a while, then you end up knowing like everybody in the industry.
Yeah.
So it's like I walk 3 booths, run into somebody I know, talk for 30 minutes, and repeat that process over and over again. It takes a long time to get through it.
It's funny. We have a lot of people like yourself who come because it's they come to AcadeCon because they don't feel like it's a work thing. Because we'll have a lot of like producers or people who make stuff in the industry, even if they're not like a household name, they still come because they can just like chill and play games. So the game table itself becomes kind of a pseudo networking thing where you're just playing games with random people that okay, I follow you on Twitter. I didn't realize that. It's fun.
No, I totally get that. But yeah, most of my games have all been pickup games when they're at a event. Very rarely is it, do I sign up for games.
I will say this, typically, you may or may not know this, but my game group always comes every year. And what we usually will do is after the convention closes, we'll like find a room in the hotel, like one of the boardrooms or something. Yeah. And like, we try to be all secretive about it, even though it's probably okay. But we're like breaking out our stuff, and, somebody's usually got a bottle of whiskey and we're just hanging out, until 3 a.m.
That's kind of the stuff I end up doing, or, end up at the bar, right? Like, I rarely drink during the year, but then when I go to conventions, my liver takes a beating.
So Parks in chat asked about pickup games. Basically, a pickup game is something that's not scheduled. It's not an event that someone has put on the list for you to sign up for. It's just sort of hey, I'm free, you're free. Do you want to sit down and play a game right now? And then you sit down, and then you're like, hey, we got room for 2 more. And then just people sort of find each other and you play a game like off book.
Yeah, you don't sign up for it. And I think that's like, more than what happens too, just because, a lot of these people I know from the internet, but, you actually get to hang out and meet with them in person for the first time.
I got to play it.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say last year, for example, the pickup game, I got to play a pickup game of Jason Statham's Big Vacation at AcadeCon last year, where we were all playing Jason Statham's Entourage. It's one of Grant Howitt's one-page games. Such a good game.
Oh, that's great. So we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
again, if you're listening to this, if you're anywhere near Dayton, Ohio in November, it's, it is kind of the Midwest, so it's really not that far. I know we're not the biggest name. It's a hard name to remember. Everyone thinks it's AcadeCon. I get it, but it truly is a special little event. Like our motto for our podcast is, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. We just, no matter what you're doing, if everyone at your table had a good time, then you did a good job as the DM. And our motto for the convention is gaming with friends, old and new. Everything just feels like you're playing games with your buddies, but maybe these are friends you just haven't met yet, but you'll be friends by the end of it, type of a thing. So that's part of the reason why, again, we also don't charge fees for our games, because I get it. It's a better business decision because I'm dumb, but I think it feels more like you're hanging out with your friends when you're not actually paying for individual games. You buy a badge to get into the room, but once you're in the room, like I will say, there's like a couple events that cost money, but there's particular reasons, and those are, why. So if you sign up for that, that you're paying for it, but 99.9% of them are free. So Tom, as someone who came to the first one and is now part of the family, how would you try to convince somebody that they should come hang out with us?
Okay, this is how I'm going to convince you.
Because you might get on the podcast if you come. That's kind of how it works.
Dayton is a dark, cold, depressing place in November. All right. But AcadeCon is a shining, warm light that you can be a part of. So if you have 5 people, go buy that really cheap package that Michael screwed up on. All right. You'll save so much money. Load all of your friends up in your car, get a hotel room at the connected hotel. It's like $100 a night, split the cost, and you have just had the best gaming weekend for the littlest amount that you can probably spend. So I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's such an accessible convention for people to come to. So it's just a lot of fun. So like Michael said, if you are anywhere close to Dayton and you got a few friends who can chip in on gas, just drive, whatever, across Illinois or Indiana or wherever you're coming from in the Midwest, and come hang out in Dayton. It's a good time.
Even from Jersey, it's not too bad of a drive. It's like somewhere in the 6 to 8 hour range, depending.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly familiar with Ohio to know. Like, I know I've driven to Origins, I've driven through Ohio to get to Indianapolis. So
Dayton's not that far from Columbus or Origins is, so it's like 40 minutes, away.
Yeah.
So
it's like an hour and a half from Indianapolis. So it's kind of triangulated there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as always, folks, links are in the description. Go check them out if you're looking for a good time and a convention to go to, or you can just go hang out over on the RPG Academy as well. And until next time, stay nerdy.